Let's talk about sourcing. I put sources in three categories, and I expect these three categories of people to be in your stories. So, authority or power figure, right? So, somebody who has authority or power over the issue. That might be a lawmaker or a legislator, a school principal, somebody, a business owner, somebody who has a dog in that fight, as it were, but they are in a position of power. Then there are these sort of middle ground people who are experts. So this is somebody that's knowledgeable, but they're more objective about the issue. So professional associations, sometimes advocacy groups, researchers in particular. So, academic researchers, think tank researchers, or people who are accomplished or awarded in a certain area. Again, they are more objective. They aren't necessarily involved in this issue for this particular story, but they have knowledge about this bigger topic. And then equally as important are the people who are affected by the topic. So people or groups that we might think of these as regular people. So these are people who do have a dog in that fight as well, right? They're affected by this and we need to hear from them. So as opposed to just some individual person with an opinion, everybody's got an opinion and they are perfectly valid, but it makes more sense when we're talking about these regular people often to go to a group and get somebody who represents that group that represents a larger body of people. So let's look at a few examples here. So for example, if we're talking about the topic being tuition, a tuition increase, a college president, a state legislator, those would be people in power. If we're talking about an expert, the Association of College Financial Aid Directors, there is an association for virtually everything. There's actually an association of associations. Student debt crisis group would be a potential expert. Professors or academics who do research on debt. All of those might fit into the expert category. And then, of course, if we're talking about people who are affected by student debt, think about students paying for college. And again, not just any random student, but perhaps there's a group that would be more engaged, as it were, and might represent a larger body of students, even student government. So this helps you put a face on the story, right? When we really get someone's perspective, we care more about that person than we do about the numbers. So maybe it's a vice president of the First Gen College Student Association. And also don't forget about parents, right? So parents also are affected by this. So you might talk with somebody with a parents association. This gives you a little bit of an idea of the type of sources you'll be looking for. Let's look at an example of an interview strategy. So I think that you should identify the best person to talk to, right? So this is the goal. This is who I really want to talk to. But I need to have a backup plan. So I'm also going to reach out to this next best person. That might work. And you know what? If it comes down to it, this person, okay, well, maybe if this is all I can do and still make deadline and it still might work, I'm going to do that. Okay, so it is perfectly okay for you to have this strategy of aiming for this, may have to settle for this on deadline, then still keep trying to work for this person. What I don't want is some random person's opinion. It doesn't work on deadline for you to say, I've got this assignment due, I'm going to go ask somebody on the quad what they think about this. That doesn't work. But it's perfectly okay for there to be a sliding scale of who will do for the moment. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in practice. So if you say you want to talk to somebody at the ACLU, you want somebody at the national office, somebody potentially talking about how DACA students are treated. So we're going to call the national office of the ACLU and put in a request for an interview. But we're also going to call the Texas office of the ACLU. That's perfectly okay. Maybe we can get somebody from the Texas office. And we're also going to try the Austin office because, as much as we would like somebody speaking about it from the national perspective and the Texas perspective, we'll ask for Austin as well. And we might also say, let's at least try to get a professor who is familiar with this or the immigration attorney. And if nothing else, we may try for an advocacy group spokesperson in general. Any of these would be acceptable. And again, we would still hope that this person calls us back. And just because we've done this interview or the ACLU Austin interview doesn't mean that we shouldn't still talk to the national expert if we eventually get a call back from that person. The more interviews, the better. We also can look on our own faculty. At Texas State and many universities have researchers that work across the disciplines. So if you look on some of the department websites, you'll see some of the faculty research, specific faculty research that's done. Some universities run sort of an expert board where you can look on their website and they'll tell you who their faculty members are that are experts in specific areas. You may find researchers quoted in other media reports. So that's pretty common for you to be looking at some other stories on your topic and you find somebody who's quoted and reference to their research or who they are as an expert. You can use that person, but I don't want you just taking the quote from that media source. I want you to actually seek out that person for an interview yourself. You can, however, quote from the original research the person did, if that's appropriate, but I still want you to reach out to the actual researcher. Here's a few ways to find people. So there's one free website, free service called hunter.io. This is a magic website. If you know the domain name of a company, so txstate.edu, express-news.net, which is the Express News. If you know the domain name, you can type that in and it will give you the email addresses of everybody at that domain name. Now, they may not be as up to date. Sometimes they're a little old. So for example, I'll find somebody when I do tests on the Express News to check this out from time to time, I find people who haven't worked there in a year. It just means they haven't taken their email address off the server, but still very helpful. So say, for example, if you're looking for the American Heart Association, you need somebody there. If you put in heart.org, which is the American Heart Association's company, then it will return all of these email addresses. And so 3,500 results, which might be more than you want to go through, but if you've got a specific name of somebody you're looking for, then you can search the group for that name. Really, really helpful. Here's another one. This doesn't return email addresses, but this is familytreenow.com. So it's actually an ancestry website, but you should try putting your name in here and see what comes up. It might be a little freaky. It will pull up current and past addresses, and it will also pull up phone numbers. And again, it's only as accurate as, it can be, but I will tell you that these phone numbers are accurate and these addresses are accurate because this is me. And so I don't have some of these phone numbers anymore, and I don't live at all these places, obviously, but they were current, and some of these phone numbers are accurate. So, how do they know my cell phone number? I don't know. Now that you've done the interview, what about fact-checking the interview? Just because somebody says something doesn't mean you have to take it as golden, right? It is not uncommon for any number of people, from the experts across to the authorities and the regular folks, to give you information that might be just a little off. So you've got to make sure that you also check that information. And if somebody gives you conflicting information in an interview from what another source said, you may have to go back and ask the question again to try to clarify. So check out the people that you're interviewing. Check them on LinkedIn. Check their social media to make sure that you are talking to, they are who they say they are, that they do have these credentials. And then if something is wrong, what do you do? So if somebody gives you bad information, again, oftentimes not intentional, but people have their own perspective on things. Think about what you're going to do. If you have already published it, there are ethics issues involved. If you haven't published it, it's a matter for you to make a decision, right, and to go back and collect more information. So ethics with respect to this, acting independently, right, confirming the information yourself, and then correcting errors if you have already published it, being sure that you go back and correct the information. We often make a note of that on the top of the story, that the story has been updated with corrected information. This topic will come up more as we talk about law and ethics later in the course. The law and ethics paper calls for you to reflect upon what you've done this semester to see where your project intersected law and ethics.